Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping into something really unique and honestly very timely. We're looking at the idea of a diaspora, but through the specific lens of an indigenous nation, the Mayawi, and specifically how they're responding strategically to, well, rising global tensions. Our mission here is to pull out the key insights from a really powerful address from their leadership, the Office of the Kachishek. Think of it as a shortcut to understanding the challenges and the proactive steps Indigenous communities are taking today. Yeah, so the source we're digging into is this official broadcast. It's from the Office of the Kachike of the Mayawi Nation, and the title is pretty evocative. In a time of war, Chief Ojeda speaks to the diaspora. So this deep dive should really shed light on their unique viewpoint and what they're actually doing. It raises fascinating questions, doesn't it? How does a nation with such an ancient lineage navigate these incredibly complex, modern global issues? What perspective do they bring?
That's exactly it. And that's why this is so compelling, I think. It's a profound reminder that if you want to understand global dynamics, you really have to look beyond just the usual state actors. Hearing directly from an indigenous nation like this, it offers some really insightful lessons on sovereignty, resilience, connection in our world today, often stuff that gets overlooked.
Okay, so let's unpack this term first. Diaspora. Where does it come from? It originates from Greek, meaning to scatter.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, it refers to people who share a common homeland or culture or ancestry, but they're, spread out across different countries.
Right. And for the Mayawi Nation, this isn't just some academic term. It's very real. We're talking about over 3,500 citizens. And many of them trace their lineage directly back to the Taino and Arawak nations, the ancient indigenous peoples who were dominant across the Caribbean historically. And today, these Mayawi citizens are living across the Caribbean, yes, but also the United States, South America, really quite spread out.
What really struck me from the source, though, is how they frame this diaspora. It's this core message of enduring identity. The address says, and I'm quoting here, "They are workers, students, artists, parents, but most of all, they are still our nation. They are Mayawi, no matter where they sleep." That emphasis on identity, that it transcends physical borders, what does that tell us about nationhood, particularly for indigenous peoples?
It's a really powerful statement, isn't it? It declares that identity, that nationhood, isn't just about territory on a map. It's deeply tied to lineage, to culture, to this shared sense of belonging. For a dispersed indigenous nation, maintaining that connection, spiritual, cultural, it's absolutely fundamental to their sovereignty, to their resilience. It ensures that even when they're scattered, they remain a coherent whole, a nation.
So they establish that strong sense of identity first. Then the address turns to the global situation, the challenging environment. It says very clearly, war is no longer a distant topic. And the chief's broadcast points directly to what they see as a specific catalyst for this heightened tension. It states that former U.S. President Donald Trump re-entered the global stage, not with peace, not with reflection, but with aggression, which they say escalated tensions in several conflict zones. Now, it's really crucial for us to state here, we're simply relaying the content of the source material. We're impartial, not endorsing any specific political viewpoint expressed in it.
Exactly. And connecting that observation to the bigger picture, the address then talks about the ripple effects. Things like rising military deployments, markets shifting, borders getting tighter. And the source is blunt about it. When powerful nations rattle sabers, it is the displaced and forgotten communities who suffer first. It highlights a real vulnerability.
Can you elaborate on that vulnerability? How do these big global shifts disproportionately hit groups like the Mayawi diaspora, especially this idea of their dual statuses?
Sure. So dual statuses basically means many Mayawi citizens hold citizenship both within their indigenous nation and in the country where they currently live, like, say, the U.S. or a Caribbean state. This sounds straightforward, but it creates unique vulnerabilities. Why? Because in a crisis, or if conflict escalates, their host country might not recognize or prioritize their indigenous identity or the specific rights that come with it. So when borders tighten or things flare up, their indigenous status could potentially be overlooked. This might leave them without the full protections that, say, other citizens of that state might have. It creates a kind of precarious legal limbo, a humanitarian concern.
Okay, so faced with this turbulence and precariousness, how does the leader, Chief Samuel Ojeda Mercado, respond? The address makes a point of saying he does not panic, he does not chase headlines, he does not abandon diplomacy. That sounds quite different from maybe more conventional reactions we see. What's the philosophy behind that? What can we learn about leadership there?
Well, it's really interesting contrast, isn't it? This approach, it seems to prioritize measured diplomacy over, say, reactive panic. I think it offers a crucial lesson in resilient leadership, that real strength in a crisis might not be about loud pronouncements, but about quiet, consistent, strategic foresight, diplomatic hard work. The philosophy seems rooted in long-term survival and protection of their people rather than, short-term political points. It's about keeping a steady hand, focusing internally on the nation's well-being, even when everything outside is volatile.
And what are the actual concrete actions they're taking? You mentioned behind-the-scenes work.
Yes, the address mentions specifics, like tightening the diplomatic belt, sending out peace statements to foreign embassies and also to their indigenous allies. It's about doing that quiet, effective groundwork, making sure their voice is heard, their position understood, often through channels that aren't, grabbing headlines. It's very much proactive engagement, not just reacting.
And it's not just high-level diplomacy, right? The source talks about very practical protections, too, building legal protections and digital infrastructure to track and safeguard our citizens abroad. The chief states, during war, paperwork matters, recognition matters, and preparation saves lives. What's the deeper insight there? It sounds almost administrative, but clearly it's vital.
It absolutely is vital. It's not just admin. It's a profound recognition, really. In our complex, interconnected world, things like formal recognition, clear documentation, they become a fundamental defense against becoming stateless, against being vulnerable. Think about it. For a nation whose sovereignty might not be universally recognized by every single state actor, setting up clear legal frameworks, keeping precise records of their citizens abroad, that's a literal lifeline. It's about turning these big ideas of sovereignty into practical, potentially life-saving measures for people spread across the globe.
Okay, so there's protection, there's diplomacy. But the address suggests the Mayawi philosophy goes beyond just reacting or defending. It says they stand for something more powerful than resistance.
Yeah.
And their piece is described as strategic, global, and rooted in indigenous dignity. What does that actually mean in practice? How do they engage globally with that vision?
It means their idea of peace isn't passive waiting. It's an active stance, an intentional one. The chief has actually renewed a call for global partnership. The address mentions inviting other peace-minded nations, sovereign tribes, activist leaders, and spiritual elders around the world to join them. So this isn't just about avoiding conflict for themselves. It's about actively trying to build a coalition for a different kind of global order, one based on shared indigenous values, things like interconnectedness, respect, dignity.
And then there's this powerful image they use, forming a sacred shield of indigenous unity. The address really draws a contrast, not in war, but in resistance to war. Not in silence, but in sacred diplomacy. Not in chaos, but in clarity. How does that sacred shield metaphor capture what's unique about their strategy?
Well, a shield isn't really a weapon, is it? It's protective. Defensive, but in an active way. It signifies that their strength comes from unity, from shared values, not from aggression. It highlights this model of proactive peace-building, engaging through what they call sacred diplomacy, which sounds like diplomacy rooted in their spiritual and cultural principles. It's presented as an alternative to just getting caught up in the chaos of global tensions, a path focused on collective clarity, a principled stand against discord. And underpinning all this is this really powerful statement of belief in their own resilience. The address says, our survival has never been guaranteed, but our ability to rise is unstoppable. That speaks volumes about their history, their endurance, and a profound faith in their future.
So bringing it right back down to the individual, the person living abroad, part of this diaspora, the broadcast delivers a very direct message to them. It's incredibly protective. We see you. We hear you.
Yes, and it's immediately followed by that commitment.
Yeah.
Under the leadership of Chief Ojeda, we are building the systems to protect you.
It's about reassurance, right? Letting their citizens know, wherever they might be, that their nation is actively working for them, building tangible support.
And then the final ultimate promise, wherever you are in this world, your citizenship is not forgotten. Your voice is sacred. Your connection to this nation is permanent. That's a really profound declaration of belonging, regardless of geography or circumstance.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive looking at this Mayawi address, it really shows a multi-layered approach, doesn't it? From defining who they are as a global community to navigating conflict with this careful, strategic diplomacy and holding on to this clear vision of peace. I think it offers some really unique insights into how an indigenous nation is redefining sovereignty connection in today's very challenging world. It definitely does. And this deep dive into the Mayawi Nation's address, it really makes us consider, doesn't it? In this increasingly complex global landscape we're all navigating, What lessons can we perhaps take from indigenous nations like the Mayawi? Lessons about maintaining identity across borders, about advocating for peace in maybe different ways, and ensuring the safety of communities who are dispersed. How might some of these principles, apply beyond their specific situation, maybe to other groups facing similar challenges of displacement or navigating global instability? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.